Hello, I'm Merlin Thompson, and welcome to Working with Parents, Past, Present, and Future. Everywhere I go, it always seems music teachers have questions about parental involvement. Should music teachers require parents to attend their child's music lessons? Is it advantageous for music teachers to require parents to monitor their child's practicing at home? How much should parents be involved? How much should parents step back from their child's musical journey? In response to these compelling questions, we're going to take a look at what's gone on in the past, what's happening right now in the present, and what does all this mean for the future. Thanks so much for joining in. How have music teachers and parents interacted with each other from a historical perspective? My impression is that teachers have enjoyed an honorable social status ever since the beginning of time. From ancient times to modern days, people have relied on teachers as authorities based on their knowledge and expertise. It's because teachers are authorities that parents have turned to teachers again and again, certain that teachers' expertise will bring enlightenment and growth to their children's own personal development. How has this notion of teachers as authorities played out in terms of teachers' interactions with parents over, say, the last 100 years? Let's start with a trip to my childhood, growing up in the 1950s and 60s. I grew up during an era when parents dropped off their children for music lessons, and that was that. As a child, just like other students, I attended years of piano lessons all on my own. And during that time, I have few memories of my parents ever talking with my piano teachers, other than to arrange for tuition payment or the obligatory rushed conversations following performances. I grew up during an era of minimal interaction between teachers and parents. Why? It has a lot to do with teachers as authorities. Teachers chose to work with minimal input from parents as an acknowledgement that teachers knew what they were doing. They were the authorities, and they kept parents at a distance because they didn't want parents getting in the way. So parents dropped off their children for lessons, no questions asked. During the 1970s and 80s, the influence of teachers as authorities evolved in response to two different occurrences. This was the period during which the Suzuki method gained a significant foothold in North American music teaching. And along with it came the emphasis on parent participation. Coincidentally, at the same time, governmental institutions in Europe and North America recognized the need for parents to be more involved in the education of their children. So things changed. Instead of parents being kept at a distance, as evident prior to 1970, parents were encouraged to get involved with their children's educational pursuits. In the music education environment from this time forward, we see a gradual increase in books and resources written to help parents with setting up the home musical environment and giving parents the task of becoming teachers at home. Now, what's interesting about these resources is that while they have immense practicality as sources of information for parents, I can't help coming away with the impression that teachers' position as authorities remained unchanged. It seems that involving parents was more about parents adopting the teacher's perspective, even going so far as to replace the parents' existing musical environment with what teachers considered to be the idyllic musical environment, and that teachers as authorities preferred parents to take on the role of teacher at home rather than their own intuitive role as parent. Teachers preferred it when parents would view their child's musical studies from the teacher's perspective. The whole point being for parents to assimilate the teacher's values, attitudes, and behaviors. To answer the question of how have music teachers interacted with parents in the past, from this brief examination, we see how past teachers maintained their status as authorities, and this impacted their interaction with parents. Firstly, by keeping parents at a distance, and later on, by asking parents to relinquish their own parental instincts in favor of taking on the teacher's values and the role of teacher at home. An interesting start to our journey. Let's move on to the present. What does research have to say about parental involvement? It's not hard to find music education research that talks favorably about how parental interest or involvement can have a positive effect on students' musical achievement. Parental involvement is seen as contributing to students' motivation, persistence, and ongoing musical commitment. And there's more. Music education researchers also indicate that parental involvement isn't always a guarantee of students' musical success. The overarching message of music education research is that music teachers should make every effort to get parents involved so that their students may experience the benefits. At the same time, there's another branch of research that we should bring into the conversation. It comes under the title Self-Determination Theory, developed by University of Rochester professors Edward Dietschy and Richard Ryan. Their research focuses on the factors that influence intrinsic motivation, or what is it that drives each one of us to do things for ourselves. And what do they have at the top of their list? Autonomy, the need we all have to direct our own lives. Autonomy, also known as independence, is the feeling we have when we take charge of what we do. Our autonomy and independence flourishes when we feel that our personal efforts or pursuits are internally generated and implemented rather than externally imposed or determined by others. And in the case of students successfully learning to sing or play a musical instrument, we see autonomy and independence are absolute must-haves. The final research resource I want to include comes from the field of culturally responsive teaching, an educational movement that emerged recently in response to the long-standing inequities in education, drawing attention to the long history of ethnically diverse families having to forfeit their cultural background and psychological well-being in order to assimilate the dominant culture's preferred learning approach. The message of culturally responsive teaching is that in order for instruction to be relevant, teachers need to learn about their students and parents so that they can build on the various cultural and personal layers that students and parents bring with them. That means paying attention to who are the parents of our students. Not so that we can change parents to look like teachers, as previous generations of music teachers did, but so that we can support and enhance their music connections in ways that match what's already going on. What stands out when I combine these three research resources is how the interaction between teachers and parents consists of several layers. From music education research, we find encouragement for teachers to find ways to involve parents in their child's musical journey. Whereas with self-determination theory, we find a reminder that teachers need to keep students' independence and autonomy in sight. And finally, with culturally responsive teaching, another reminder that it's about supporting who parents are, not changing them into something else. How can music teachers and parents work together, given the many layers of influence in today's context? Let me talk a bit about how I've interpreted everything so far. And for me, the most meaningful starting place connects with culturally responsive teaching, where I always want to keep in mind that the parents of my students are real life people. Parents have their own backgrounds and ways of making things work for their children. They live in the real world and they've got a lot going on in their lives. Their days are packed full of obligations. They've got jobs, partner needs, laundry, making meals, housekeeping, planning for next year and the next 10 years. They have a million things on their minds. And their child's music lessons don't take place in some kind of idyllic setting. It takes place within the real life schedule of daily life. Recognizing real life parents means that I welcome parents for who they are. And I anticipate that parents will come with various degrees of involvement, from highly involved to not involved at all. And how I involve them is always a reflection of student independence and autonomy. For parents who want to be involved, my focus isn't on giving parents an endless list of things to do at home. My focus is on strategies that purposefully nurture and support students' independence. This means I'm very particular about the language I use during lessons so that I put students in charge at all times. For example, I never turn to the parent and say, make sure your child does this at home, or please monitor such and such during your child's practice. These are statements that put parents in charge, not their children. Right from the very first lesson, I always put the child in charge with statements like, why don't you show your dad how to do this when you get home? Or why not even show him the wrong version and the right version so your dad knows about both? At home, I encourage parents to keep a three-part framework in mind. Step in, step back, and let go. With step in, parents can provide assistance, but if parents are stepping in all the time, most likely students get impatient with parents always taking charge. So that's where step back is important, in allowing space for children to take ownership of their learning. And parents letting go is important, as students benefit when they're given space to learn and make mistakes, to learn from their successes and failures. I also have a timeline for parental involvement, with parents assisting 5 and 6-year-old beginners for approximately 2 to 3 years with this age group, and with older beginners, I encourage parental involvement for a much shorter period of time, with step in, step back, let go. That's what I do with parents who want to be involved. What do I do with parents who want their child to pursue piano lessons on their own? And I should say that I have just as many parents who attend lessons for those first 3 years as parents who don't attend lessons at all. What's really interesting for me is that how I teach doesn't really change whether parents attend lessons or not. Because what's most important is how I empower students' independence right from their very first lesson. When students can't take ownership of what we're working on, then I'm the one who needs to make some adjustments. I need to find ways to make things doable and manageable, to keep things simple, Because if what I'm teaching is so complicated that students can only achieve success by their parents monitoring their practice, then I'm making things much too hard for everyone. And I help students get the most out of doing simple things by doing those simple things several different ways. The regular way, the fast way, the stiff way, the opposite of what we're working on way. In other words, differentiated practice. What's important when parents aren't involved is that I teach in a way that my students can take ownership, knowing that at times everything will go well, and on other occasions it may take more than 1 week of fine tuning on my part before students get the optimal results. For all parents, actively involved or not, I incorporate parent check-ins 3 times a year. September, the beginning of the school year, a mid-year check-in in January, and an end-of-the-year check-in in June. With each check-in, my framework for parent check-ins includes the following topics for discussion: musical goals, life skills, and family home life. And by including these topics, my goal is to help parents understand that students' musical journey takes place in response to various influences. When we pay attention to what's happening in one area, we'll most likely see there's an impact on another area. For example, if my student Arthur sets a musical goal to complete Two Pieces Hands Together, it makes sense that he would share his accomplishment in a family home concert. Or if he's focused on persistence, then it would have an impact on his accuracy in performance and help with the goal of completing Pieces Hands Together. In other words, Arthur's success is more than just setting musical goals. It's all about how musical goals, life skills, and family home life overlap and intertwine with each other. During parent check-ins, I appreciate the opportunity to hear what parents have to say and to share with them my own reflections of what's going on. It's a great way to reinforce that parents and teacher both have something to contribute to students' ongoing musical development. You may be wondering how I respond to difficult situations with parents in my studio, and it's certainly an important and challenging topic. Unfortunately, I'll admit that some parents bring attitudes and actions that I find difficult to respond to. Shame and embarrassment, over-aggressive discipline, obsessive control, unrealistic and harmful expectations. While I've attempted to be the protective shield for my students, I can honestly say that my efforts have mostly been unsuccessful. Nevertheless, it hasn't stopped me from trying my best to be a positive influence on the situation. Even though you can probably imagine how, on occasion, when I've made suggestions to parents about how they might do things differently, their response was to switch to another teacher. In the long run, I've come to learn that a family's home life is well beyond my area of influence. Sometimes my input will be successful, and other times not. And it's important for my own personal well-being as a teacher to not admonish my own teaching approach or to become obsessive about trying to figure out what I could do to change difficult situations. There's a certain amount of self-nurturing and self-support I need to do for myself, and that means acknowledging the limitations of what I may accomplish in a music lesson setting. Before I wrap things up here, I want to connect you with an excellent resource, my book, More Than Music Lessons. Here you'll find a whole treasure trove of ideas, tools, and strategies from my 40-year career of working with parents. And here's where I go into much greater detail than I've been able to share with you today. You can order it on Amazon or directly from the publisher, Roman and Littlefield. And I'd also like to tell you about Teach Music 21C, another super resource that has lots of resources for music teachers. And if you'd like to know more about Teach Music 21C, please follow us on Instagram. You'll find podcasts on all kinds of topics on our YouTube channel and Spotify. And I'll encourage you to sign up for our free weekly newsletter that's filled with ideas and inspirations you won't find anywhere else. Should music teachers require parents to attend their child's music lessons? Is it advantageous for music teachers to require parents to monitor their child's practicing at home? How much should parents be involved? How much should parents step back from their child's musical journey? I'm hoping that what we've explored here today will shed light on these questions. No doubt, some of the themes feel familiar. You recognize things you've already implemented in your teaching. And I also suspect some of the themes brought forward may feel less familiar. What I hope you can see is how working with parents isn't some kind of one-size-fits-all undertaking. It's about respecting parents as real-life individuals whose daily life includes a wealth of valuable experiences and a ton of responsibilities and obligations. Under such circumstances, involving parents in their children's musical development works best when we music teachers value parents for who they are and what they're prepared to do, rather than trying to reconfigure them into some kind of idyllic version of parental involvement. What seems important for us as music teachers is to be the teachers parents can depend on. That we're the teachers who give our best to make things work for their situation. Accepting parents as real-life individuals is fundamental to this process because how parents participate in their child's musical journey will always be in relation to the values, priorities, and background they bring forward. As music teachers, what I really want to encourage all of us to do is to fill our teaching with awareness, gratitude, and hope. To use our awareness into the lives of our students' families to fine-tune our teaching. To be thankful for their willingness to explore music this week, next week, and the months and years to come. And to teach with the hope that music making will become the lifelong treasure we've all come to know for ourselves. I'm Merlin Thompson, and it's been a pleasure to share with you working with parents, past, present, and future. Until next time, thanks so much for joining in.